Welcome, everyone. When I was 15 years old, I was assigned the book La Carte d'identité by Ivorian author Jean-Marie Adiafi. It changed my life forever because it triggered what would become an endless fascination, searching, questioning of who I really am, with or without an identity card. It seems to always be someone else who determines who I am. And I realized that because of this, I have always, or to the best of my memory, always been in exile to myself. But it was not until the European network of migrant women and its young women's group, Radical Girls, along with Sciences Po's research program on gender, Pressage, under the direction of Professor Hélène Perevier, director of Sciences Po's Gender Studies program. It was not until they carried out this research project that this searching became not just internal, but part of my professional life as founder and president of Women Forward International. The idea emerged in our whole team and affiliates as we watched and listened to your research this year, that the refugee exists in each and all of us, especially those of us who are identified immediately as women, as foreign, or as marginal. Whether it is an external voice explicitly telling us we are an outsider, or we are listening to an introject inside that suppresses and sometimes shames our authentic nature, whether a parental figure or a social stigma in our communities has made us hide our authenticity, most people can barely write a sentence that is entirely true. Of course, words never speak truth. The Sciences Po team, through this partnership with the European Network of Migrant Women and Radical Girls, has done something unique with their research. They've made it essential to everyone here today and to everyone in the world, those who are fleeing from places they have loved, to save their lives or to make their lives better, and arrived in new locations that automatically declare them as not part of our family, society, or community, are no different from anyone who knows what it's like to be a stranger to themselves, and that is everyone. And yet there are so many who still believe that we are not really one human family. As Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, the first person who, having enclosed a plot of land, took it into his head to say, "This is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him, was the true founder of civil society. Like the best kind of philosopher, this group of researchers has put everything into question, reorienting what it means to own land, to belong to a land, and to be accepted on this earth. You cannot read their report and, perhaps more strikingly, listen to their poetry and be blinded by the projections we all have put onto one another. That time is over. We are at a precipice. As we truly look at the principles on which the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Cedaw, is built, we start to see humanity crumbling under the weight of a promise unkept to itself. The first step to repairing this gaping oversight is to find out once again, to rediscover the essence that makes us one family, and to hold our institutions and our neighbors and our educational systems accountable to this treasured knowing. As this report asks, could this global crisis provide an opportunity for addressing systemic flaws and barriers and creating a more equal society? They write, the answer to this question lies in part in the participation of migrant and refugee women in regional and international decision-making processes. How can we do this? That's what we're going to hear today. We have the privilege of hearing from each participating contributor to this toolkit and report, and we welcome those who are in a position to make real change possible today. Nicole Amaline, Vice Chairperson of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Cedaw, and by video, Delphine O, French Ambassador at Large, Secretary General for the Generation Equality Forum, Beijing Plus 25. Thank you to all who have joined us to acknowledge our shared journey to find our humanity and to provide comfort, love, affection, sweetness, and friendship to all those souls who have traveled very far just to find a soft pillow to sleep on, the funds to purchase a delightful toy for their child, a voice in their community. And what a contribution that voice could be, should it have the opportunity to be heard, since it is only those who experience suffering themselves who can have the compassion necessary to heal society. In this time of pandemic, we could all use a bit of healing. I now give the floor to Anna Zobnina, Policy Coordinator of the European Network of Migrant Women.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Kent. Thank you to all who joined us today in this webinar. Thank you, a very special thank you to our special guests, even though Delphine O is not in person with us, but very special appreciation to Nicole Amelin, who found the time to spend this 1.5 hours with us. I want to say a very big thank you to all participants and all contributors to this project, starting with Women Forward International, of course, who supported this project, to the students and their supervisors at the Science Po University, to our own young migrant women, radical girls in our network. But most of all, I want to say thank you to the young refugee and migrant women who participated in this project. This is the most significant achievement for us. Nothing matters if it stays on paper. Only real impact on the lived realities of women is what should be counted as an actual result. I want to say, as a coordinator of the European Network of Migrant Women, why we suggested this date for organizing this event. As probably a lot of you know, 20th of June marks the International Day of Refugees. At this point in time, there are around 18 million displaced persons globally. Among them, around 27 million are refugees, and at least half of them are women and girls. This means that we have perhaps around 15 million women and girls globally. And let's remember, most of them are not hosted in Europe due to very restrictive migration and asylum policies in Europe. They are hosted in the what is called developing world. It is the women who do not have access to the very basics. They do not have access to clean water. They do not have access to safety. They do not have access to basic hygiene, health services, but they also don't have access to information. And this is what this action and research project is about. There are, unfortunately, very few international legal instruments that address specifically the rights of women and girls. But there is, thankfully, such an instrument as Cedaw. For us, the importance of Cedaw Convention cannot be underestimated. Through its whole history of 40 years now, Cedaw Committee has developed extensive jurisprudence, and I'm sure that the vice chair of Cedaw committee will tell us more about it. But from our perspective of a migrant-led and refugee women-led organization, there are several general recommendations that we keep going back to them when we speak about the rights of migrant women and girls, such as the general recommendation number 26 on the women migrant workers, or general recommendation 32 on the gender-related dimension of refugee status, asylum, nationality, and statelessness of women. Very important general recommendations 19 and 35 on violence against women. And the most recent general recommendation 38 on trafficking in women and girls in the context of global migration. It is through the process of this recommendation in which we were very active as a network, because this is a very important subject for us, that we got to understand that Cedaw as an instrument deserves more. More women and girls need to know about this instrument, need to be engaged with it, need to use it actively. And among this group of women, migrant women is our target. And among these migrant women, young women are very important. We as a network do not include young women. We think inclusion is not enough. We treat young women as capable, active, and responsible political subjects that have the rights, should be afforded the rights to access information, tools, and exercise these rights. And this is what this project is about. It is perhaps a small-scale project. It is, we didn't cover thousands of migrant women and girls, but it has the depth and it offers the methodology. And it is this methodology that I'm very proud to say that was developed directly by young women themselves. And therefore, I'm going to finish here and I'm going to pass the floor to Carolina Medina, who is a master's student at Sciences Po University, one of the young women who took part in this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Hello, everyone. I am Carolina Medina Zarate, and I am part of the group of Sciences Po students who were tasked with the mission of defining and analyzing the factors that hinder political participation of migrant and refugee women in Europe. So our objective was to identify the existing hardships and gaps, the way that they interlock and mutually reinforce each other, and also what changes are necessary in order to overcome these obstacles and foster migrant women's active and meaningful involvement in decision-making processes. So to this aim, we aim to grasp what it means to be a woman, a young migrant woman, and a young migrant woman in Europe, and then bridge these imbrications with the political participation field and their manifestation in private and public spheres. All of this, of course, bearing in mind that young migrant women's participation in public and political life is a condition for gender equality. In fact, we assert political participation performs a leverage function for fulfilling equal enjoyment, exercise, and advocacy of human rights. And in the same way, it is only through the realization of the rights that states, associations, companies, and organizations will uphold justice and representation by promoting decision-making and governance processes that are more accurate and that reflect the composition and the voices of our societies in a more accurate way. So for this study, as Anna was saying, we used a hybrid action research methodology. This means we brought together research and grassroots field action in order to fill both academic and policy vacuums to get a more comprehensive view of the subject, and also break with historic discourses of stigmatization and essentialization. And only by doing so could we truly assess how to have an positive impact, an impact on migrant women's capacities, skills, agency, and the ability to engage in political participation. So the data we gathered was gathered using a combination of qualitative research methods, such as semi-structured interviews, and also a capacity building workshop my colleagues will unpack in a bit. So regarding the report and our findings, we first built on the idea of a continuum of violence, given that migrant women experience throughout their lives continuous circumstances of violence and risk, in which gender, sex, race, class, and age can be understood as intersecting systems of oppression. And this has, of course, impacts on psychosocial, cultural, and political dynamics, mainly because it shapes stereotypes and external perception of migrant women, but also self-perceptions and different types of violence and discrimination. There is also a whole array of structural and systematic institutional and material factors hindering young migrants' agency and independence, namely ineffective, male-centered, feeble policies, institutional, physical, and symbolic violence, and finally, insufficient resources of subsistence and livelihood opportunities. So after putting everything on the table, we came up with some recommendations, and these recommendations are multidimensional, they are multisectoral, and involve different levels of governance. This means that they are addressed to decision makers working at different levels of governance, be it EU institutions, governments, NGOs, and grassroots organizations. So among our suggestions, there is one particular cross-cutting issue, which is capacity building. And capacity building in the political sphere involves, for instance, divulgation and communication of rights, access to accurate and relevant information, and also development and reinforcement of skills. That's why we called upon in our recommendations, developing capacity building and training programs to help young migrant women realize their entitlements and develop the skills needed to participate effectively in decision-making circles and undertake leadership roles such as public speaking, teamwork, network building, knowledge of technicalities, and self-confidence. But I have to say that we really wanted to go beyond the descriptive, the enunciation of these issues, and move on to action. That's why we wanted to be active agents of change and contribute in a concrete way to these common goals. So we decided to take a first step and put forward the toolkit, the Young Migrant Women's Political Participation Toolkit. And before I give the floor to Alisa, who will speak about the toolkit's structure and the importance of building feminist foundations at all levels, I really wanted to thank all the women rights advocates, activists, researchers, writers, representatives of everybody specializing in migrant women's access to rights for your generosity, for joining us in this journey, and for believing in a world where it is possible to think and talk about equity and justice. Please, Alisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolina. First of all, I'm going to present a little bit further the network, the European Network of Migrant Women, to give you some context about why and how this project was very meaningful to us. So the European Network of Migrant Women is an NGO gathering over 50 member organizations in 23 European states, and our membership ranges from grassroots service providers to NGO focused on advocacy and research. They cover a diverse range of subjects in the area of human rights of migrant and refugee women. And some of us, our members, are also individuals coming from different parts of the world. And that way we have a unique cultural richness of women's global struggle for economic, political, and physical freedom all around the world. So as a network, our work is mainly about creating bonds between our members and facilitating their work. That's why we design training, reports, toolkits, and advocacy documents in order to provide them with the information and means they need to carry out their work. Above all, we want to bring them together through projects and events because we really believe that we're stronger together. At the European level, we also carry projects ourselves and advocate on different aspects of migrant women and girls' lives and their integration processes. We fight male violence against women and girls, including sex trafficking, prostitution, pornography, and sexual violence. We fight for the access of migrant women to their fundamental rights, not forgetting the most at risk among us, so undocumented women, underage girls. That's why we created Radical Girls, and lesbian women. We fight for meaningful political participation and economic integration. We fight for equality and we fight for justice. And This is why in 2017, our self-organized young migrant women's group emerged organically, and it just made sense for us to encourage this will for self-representation and to create a space for migrant, refugee, and ethnic minority girls with a feminist vision to find each other, come together, and find ground for collaborative work across our differences. And as Anna said already, we always want to bring the lived realities of migrant women and girls into our work and create safe spaces for the most discriminated persons in our society. And this is what we did through this project, and especially through the workshops, both online and in person, that we organized. When it comes to political participation, young migrant women are among the most discriminated groups in the world and the least represented. So meaningfully including them in spaces of power is needed to effectively tackle the challenges that we are facing worldwide. However, for this inclusion to be effective and not only tokenism, as Carolina exposed and developed in the report that was written by the students from Sciences Po, capacity building is needed. Young migrant women struggle with self-limitations due to internalized stereotypes, traumas caused by the violence they endure, also discrimination in their everyday lives, and struggle to foresee their own future. There is also a lack of role model that looks like them, and the impossibility to imagine themselves outside of contradicting injunctions between Western societies and their home culture. This is why through this project, it was for us really important to design these capacity building workshops targeted for young migrant women. We wanted to deeply impact their lives, their ability and their will to speak up, get informed about their rights and fight for what they want. To do that, our methodology was based on modern horizontal awareness raising and collective thinking techniques, artistic practice, including spoken word poetry. Gillian Montoya will say more about this later, and theater of the oppressed, which is a technique, several techniques that I really encourage NGOs and organizations to use, especially with women, and movement sessions as well, which allow us to acknowledge that body and minds are intertwined and that relearning how to connect with our bodies can also help challenge limitations. Creating a sense of group and belonging was really our first step. At the end of every activity, we had debriefing sessions where we could allow everyone to explore their feelings without being judged, without being interrupted, and share their experiences and also see how they're related with others, because the first step of awareness raising is also realizing that we share a common experience of being a woman or a migrant woman or a young migrant woman in Europe. This whole methodology, I won't go too deep into it because it's described in the toolkit we're launching today. We included specific tools, guidance for each activity with really specific advices on the number of participants, the time, etc. So it's a methodology that can be easily reproduced with the help of the toolkit. Also, the whole first step, the whole first part of the toolkit is about the vulgarization of the content and functioning of the Cedaw Convention, because not all grassroots organization or migrant women has the time, the ability or the access to be able to read through the entire convention and understand it and then be able to grasp her rights and possibilities through it and provided and guaranteed by it. So that's the first part of the toolkit. And then we develop the activities and methodology. And finally, we have a last part about how to translate this methodology to online formats, because this year, as you know, with COVID, we had to do a lot of things online, and we didn't want to lose this contact with our target group. And we also thought it was really relevant to see how to create a safe space online with the particularities of migrant women who don't always have a space for themselves, who have also, you know, other priorities sometimes than attending an online meeting. And also, since it's not always easy for them to travel and to go to places where we have our workshops or camps or events and activities, we thought that it was really good to be able to have this methodology online that was inclusive for them. Anyway, to speak about this rich experience, it was of really great importance for us to bring forward two amazing young women who participated in the capacity building workshops we conducted. So I will now give the floor to Fatima, who is a 24-year-old refugee from Russia, and then Analu, who is a 21-year-old migrant from Brazil. The floor is yours, women.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Фатима, я с России, и я хочу сказать, что эти онлайн-сессии помогли мне почувствовать свою свободу, значимость моих слов, ценность моей жизни, а также найти нужных людей, с которыми я всегда хотела поддерживать связь. Я считаю, что очень важно проводить такие встречи с мигрантками и говорить с ними об их проблемах, их значимости, их знаниях и то, как они должны себя чувствовать на самом деле. И поскольку они всю жизнь прожили в странах, где их голос никогда не звучал, когда их никогда не слышали, когда им говорили, что их жизнь имеет значение, и они рождены только для того, чтобы прислушивать кому-то, приезжая сюда, они все еще живут в этих иллюзиях, созданными плохими людьми. И поэтому очень важно встречаться с ними и говорить с ними об этом, потому что многие не знают, как и где начать говорить об этом. Многие не знают, какой шаг предпринять, и многие даже не знают, что можно что-то сделать. Они считают, что они должны всю жизнь прожить такой жизнью только потому, что плохие люди их научили этому. И я считаю, что бесспорно об этом нужно постоянно с ними беседовать. И как я заметила, мигрантки, которые все еще приезжают в страны, думая, что они обретут здесь свободу, они не обретают ее чаще из-за того, что они со своими мужьями, и чаще всего им запрещают какие-либо коммуникации с людьми, и они все еще живут в заперти и молчании, и поэтому очень важно, чтобы государство создало такое общество, из которых их бы насильно вытаскивали из домов, как бы это ни прозвучало, но надо, чтобы их насильно вытаскивали из домов и говорили с ними, говорили об их свободе, и что если у них есть проблемы, они должны об этом проблеме говорить постоянно, потому что чаще всего, если ты спросишь их, все ли с ними хорошо, даже если им плохо, они никогда не скажут, что им плохо, они будут говорить тебе, что с ними все хорошо, что все нормально, у них любящий муж, замечательная семья, но на самом деле это не так. Эта проблема существует по сей день, 21 век, а наши женщины могут сидеть без еды только потому, что мужчина не хочет работать и не хочет заставлять работать женщину, чтобы она как-то добыла себе питание. Потому что с детства нас приручают к тому, что слишком постыдно говорить о своих проблемах. Это глупое убеждение. Если тебе плохо, я считаю, что человек должен говорить, что ему плохо. Это не проблема религии. Многие ставят акцент на то, что вот потому что вы мусульмане. Нет, это проблема тупых традиций, очень глупых. И это проблема глупых людей, которые навязывают нам, какие мы должны быть каждый божий день. Как до этого прозвучала фраза, что мы мигрантки сами себе, что наши мысли мигранты. Я прожила в этом состоянии очень долго. До 21 года я жила, не знаю, кто я. Я жила, слушая людей, пытаясь им угодить, потому что с самого детства мне внушали то, что я должна терпеть, что я должна быть правильной, хорошей, и у меня не должно быть ничего плохого, и я не могу жаловаться на свои проблемы. Что бы плохое ни произошло, я должна быть благодарна. И это проблема по сей день. Но потом, когда я поняла, какой должна быть я, какой свободой должна быть я, когда я ушла от этого, когда я приехала в Польшу и год я была в депрессии, а потом, когда я начала решать проблему, потому что я видела, что мое нутро меня убивает, я начала общаться с феминистками, я начала с ними разговаривать, и они открыли мне настолько прекрасный мир, что каждое утро, когда я смотрю на себя в зеркале, я просто говорю себе: ты прекрасна, и я тебя люблю. И я очень благодарна женщинам, которые научили меня это говорить, которые учили меня видеть во мне человека прекрасного, что я неплохой, как мне это говорили, потому что в течение 21 года мне твердили, что мне нужно меняться. И эти изменения были только для людей. И эти сессии заставили меня полюбить себя еще сильнее. И я так счастлива, что я полюбила себя, я начала любить правильных людей, я начала разговаривать с правильными людьми, и я очень благодарна. И я надеюсь, что это не последняя сессия, и что я готова прожить всю жизнь вот с такими разговорами, даже если я не смогу с вами встретиться, но я надеюсь, как до этого говорили, мне запрещают путешествовать, потому что у меня есть брат, и я все еще живу в такой семье, но моя мама меня поддерживает, и я не сдаюсь, и я продолжаю делать то, что я хочу, я не стесняюсь говорить, что я феминистка, потому что у моей, на моей родине очень постыдно говорить это, но когда я вижу людей, которые начинают говорить, какими женщины должны быть, я с радостью отстаиваю свои права, и я смотрю им в лицо и говорю, я так говорю, потому что я феминистка. И не представляете, в какой-то момент вы начинаете любить злые взгляды. Вы думаете, боже, какие глупые люди, и какой умной стала ты. И это все, что я хотела сказать. Я передаю слово Аналу.
Thank you, Fatma. This was just beautiful. I love hearing you speak. So hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here. Thanks for this opportunity, because participating in this workshop was really the most life-changing experience I had until now. Through the workshop, we went through Cedaw's points and goals, but in order to actively join the fight for our rights as migrant women, we need to feel valued first. And that's exactly what this amazing group of women did with us. The safe space created for us that Alyssa mentioned was really what made a difference for me. From day one, we started to build this bond and to really make us feel comfortable just to be ourselves and to speak our truth and to be vulnerable and comfortable. So 1 week later, and one weekend later, in the middle of an activity, I started crying my eyes out for this women that I had just met. And I thought I screwed everything over, but I have never felt so seen before, so welcomed and valued, as I said. There were no facilitators or participants. We were only one group of migrant women all together sharing our experiences, and that just validated everything for me, because before this workshop, I wasn't even sure if I could call myself a migrant woman. And now I feel ready to actively join the fight for our rights, to speak up and to work with other women and to really make a difference. So I am forever grateful for these women for giving me this opportunity and to work with them. And yeah, thank you so much. I will now give the floor to Jillian Montilla. She's a science student who will speak about the power of art.
Thank you so much, Analu. Thank you so much, Fatima. So hello, everyone. My name is Jillian, and I'm honored to be addressing you all today. A few weeks ago, our Sciences Po Passage team had the opportunity to co-design and co-host a capacity building workshop with the European Network of Migrant Women and their amazing youth feminist movement called Radical Girls, all with the goal of making both Cedaw and the skills necessary to engage with it more accessible for young migrants and refugee women. While planning the workshop, we were debating what skills should we center the workshop around, what aspects of Cedaw should we engage, what will leave the biggest impact. But in the spirit of this entire project and the findings that Carolina summarized earlier, our programs and our efforts are so much better if we simply give space to young migrants and refugee women to share their input as capable and critical agents of change. So we sent out a survey to answer these questions. And their responses helped us design our capacity building exercises on online activism, public speaking, and what I'm here to share today, a session on arts and its powerful role in activism. Also, the women responded overwhelmingly that they were interested in engaging Article 5 of Cedaw on sex roles and stereotyping. So in the session, we talked about reappropriating art from its depoliticized state on dusty bookshelves where its power is left on paper. We found ourselves in women poets like Audre Lorde and Joy Harjo, great women with uncommon courage of conviction and potency of vision. And finally, we made sisterhood by opening up in a safe space about the ways we've been limited in experiencing ourselves, our lives, because of the stereotypes that constantly bombard us. What came about is a spoken word poem we'll be performing for you all today called Mirror, Mirror. And our performance will not have live interpretation, as we wanted the women to be able to speak without interruption, to be able to emote their experiences with the freedom that comes with speaking in our mother tongue. So Elisa will be sending in the chat a document with French, Spanish, and English translations for you to follow along. And with all of that wrapped up, are we ready, women? Here's our spoken word poem called Mirror, Mirror. I'll let everybody get pinned up. Okay. So waiting on Natasha and Annalie now. I need Annalie as well, I think. Pinned up. Super, there we go. So this is our poem called Mirror, Mirror. When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you, not me. Fantasies created, smoke screens obscuring reality, your fears, dreams, insecurities. When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you.
Not me. Я родилась, и они смотрели на меня, взглядом полный ожидали. Назвали меня Фатима послушная, послушная, мое второе имя. В 16 лет они отдали меня, передали, чтобы я была женой. Они назвали меня Фатима послушная, послушная, мое второе имя. Безмолвное мое третье имя. Сотри свои чувства, служи своему мужу, сломай и сожги сады пионов и жемчужный смех, переполняющий твое сердце. Теперь эти голоса, что всегда задавали не те вопросы, их слова – ключи к моей клетке, а не только эхо из прошлой жизни. Теперь их осталось лишь сломать и сжечь. Наконец-то, освобожденная пространством, чтобы потянуть свои руки к безграничным, к моим желаниям, моего сердца. Меня когда-то звали Фатима послушная, и я так рада, что уничтожила это имя. Имя, что не было моим никогда.
When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you.
Not me. Lorsque tu me regardes, ce n'est pas moi que tu vois, c'est ton propre reflet. Tu vois une image, une idée, tu projettes sur moi tes fantasmes. Tu vois l'exotisme érotisé, un mirage flou dont tu voudrais contrôler les contours. Tu vois un objet sexuel, les ombres dansantes des harems, corps voilés et dévoilés, un fantasme écrasé depuis des millénaires, avec pour unique aspiration celle de m'offrir au monde, de m'offrir à toi. Mais tu ignores la vie qui gronde en moi, les voix des femmes lumières, passées et futures, qui grondent dans mon ventre. J'ai des bombes qui s'appellent mots. Même les mains vides, même sans pouvoir, j'existe. J'ai des bombes qui s'appellent mots. Je réclame mon corps, ma vie, les identités qui m'appartiennent.
When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you.
Not me.
Irmã, minha irmã, diz-me, quando foi que me transformaram num ponto de interrogação?
Irmã, responda às tuas perguntas com o eco de outras perguntas, cujas origens foram esquecidas, mas o meu corpo não esquece. Conheces a bufetada de...
És de onde?
Conheces a queimadura de...
Por que tu não danças para nós?
Por que é que os espaços que eles me reservam são tão mal iluminados, bombeados com corpos suados, doentes com a febre da dança? Por que é que nunca têm espaço para mim? Um espaço silencioso e iluminado, com um palco para dizer o que penso, para falar sobre a existência da plenitude da minha humanidade.
Como eu devo agir quando a sucessão de questionamentos, a contínua repetição da pergunta de onde realmente és, deixa-me atordoada e incapaz de responder? Uma pergunta tão simples a explodir em minha mente. Dilema de prisioneira, interrogatório, se isso, então aquilo. Eles escondem-se por detrás da segurança de um espelho unilateral, por detrás da nuance das suas insinuações, mas a lâmpada nua mostra a intenção por detrás da sua ridicularização. Como eu interrogo o interrogador?
Irmã, responda à tua pergunta com outra pergunta. Deixas-me ajudar-te a destrancar a porta da cela?
Irmã, eu respondo a tua pergunta com outra pergunta. Deixas-me ajudar-te a aprender a beleza do teu próprio ritmo?
When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you.
Not me. Where are you, sisters? The darkness crashes in, the compass can't find north. Where are you, sister? Before I can fully despair, I hear a voice saying, there is no place for a daughter of Mother Earth to linger. Taking my hand, she delivered me from the shadow of the cave called misogyny, the darkness of my mind called isolation. Now, though I speak with joy in this light, I rest ready to re-enter the cave, ready to answer the call of any sister, asking, where are you?
When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you, not me. You are not my savior. I am not your victim. I am not your fantasy. You are not my dream. When you look at me, what you see is a mirror of you, not me.
I'm a woman free.
I am woman awakening.
I am woman uncaged.
I am woman reclaiming.
I am woman becoming.
I am woman.
I am woman.
I am woman.
I am a woman.
Thank you, women, for trusting me with your experiences and your lives through the writing of this poem. So now we are very honored to welcome Nicole Ameline, Vice Chairperson of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and Delphine O, French Ambassador at Large and Secretary General for the Generation Equality Forum. As the forum is opening in a few days on June 30th, Ambassador O unfortunately could not make it, but she sent us a video which we'll be screening now. Thank you.
Dear all, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you today to reflect on the Cedaw 40 years after its ratification and 25 years after the Beijing World Conference on Women. First of all, I want to congratulate the European Network of Migrant Women, Radical Girls and Sciences Po Psya master students for elaborating such a clear and useful toolkit. I am sure that it will help many understand what the Cedaw is and how the Cedaw committee works. When it was adopted in 1981, Cedaw really was a revolutionary convention. For the first time, the international community agreed that states had a responsibility in eliminating discrimination against women in the political and public spheres. Here we are 4 decades later. Cedaw remains a powerful legal instrument to help achieve gender equality, both at the international and the national level. However, we have to be realistic. For a vast majority of women, Cedaw and its procedures seem far removed from the reality of their life and the daily discriminations that they face. This is precisely why I found this toolkit particularly interesting and relevant. It gives practical advice and guidelines to help young migrant women make Cedaw their own, and it encourages them to use it as the powerful political tool that it is. As of today, as you know, more than 189 states have ratified Cedaw, and 193 governments were there in Beijing in 1995. However, in the past decades, no single country has achieved gender equality, and millions of women are discriminated against every day. The time for declaration is over. It's now time to take concrete, ambitious, measurable, and realistic commitments and to put in place an accountability mechanism. We need actors from all horizons of society to commit to act for gender equality. This is what we aim to achieve with the Generation Equality Forum. This forum will be the largest global feminist gathering of the last 26 years, precisely since the 95 Beijing conference. It is organized under the aegis of UN Women and co-chaired by France and Mexico. After a kickoff in Mexico in March, it will culminate in Paris from June 30th to July 2nd. This is the first time that states, international organizations, but also civil society, youth-led organizations, private companies, philanthropic foundations are sitting at the same table and working together around 6 priorities to advance gender equality and women's rights in the world. One of these 6 action coalitions is centered around feminist movements and leadership, which is of particular interest for this webinar. Among the champions working on a concrete action plan is a European youth-led organization, Young Feminist Europe, that represents the voices of young women. The goal of this action coalition is to elaborate concrete actions to encourage more women to engage with political issues, but also to fund and support feminist and women-led organizations and movements, and to create and protect civic space for feminist action and organizing, just like what the Young Migrants Women's Political Participation Toolkit is aiming at. Today, we're standing at the crossroads of 2 crises that endanger women's rights. On one hand, we're observing a rise of conservative movements that want to undo years of progress. On the other hand, we're facing a global health crisis that has exacerbated gender inequalities and reversed women's rights in many places. Young migrant women are particularly affected by those 2 crises, so it is crucial to develop tools to help them raise their voices, to empower them, and be part of political decision-making processes. I'm happy that the Young Migrant Women's Political Participation Toolkit is one of these tools. I thank you all for your attention, and I wish you fruitful discussions. I do hope to see you all at the Generation Equality Forum in 2 weeks, virtually. Registrations are open to everyone, so do not hesitate to go to forumgenerationegalite.fr to get more info. Thank you very much.
We thank French Ambassador Delfino for her kind words and for sending her the video. She couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but we're glad to be counting on that visual support. Right now, I want to introduce Nicolas Méline. So Nicolas Méline is the French politician, diplomat, and women's rights advocate. She served as a member of the National Assembly of France and was the French Minister for Gender Equality between 2002-2005. And she has also been a member of the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, so the Cedaw Committee, since 2008. And right now she is the committee's chairperson since the year 2013. The floor is yours, Nicolas Méline.
Thank you very much. And I hope that you hear me very well. It's not very easy. I greatly appreciate this webinar, and I would like to congratulate you very much for this inspiring presentation, and also the great and very, very interesting and positive work you have done with this toolkit. I would like to, of course, greet the European Network of Migrant Women. We know them perfectly in Geneva, and also the Sciences Po team for encouraging this excellent research program. And by listening to your very, very impressive witnesses and the presentation, I thought that it was possible maybe to make a bridge between this research program and our committee, because it could be very interesting maybe to welcome you to Geneva and to deepen this excellent work. I greet, of course, all the participants and speakers, and thank you for having given such a strong presentation of the Cedaw Convention. You are absolutely right, and I think that by highlighting the strengths of this convention, you pave the way for a new generation. And I would like to just to recall that the Cedaw Convention is the most important binding instrument in the world to protect, to fulfill, to promote women's rights. And of course, especially women victims of discriminations. And we can say that all over the world, women remain the first victims of violences, conflicts, discrimination, sufferings. But in the meantime, and you demonstrate that very well tonight, in the meantime, they are the leading force for change. You are the leading force for change. And I think that for the Cedaw committee, maybe there is some very, very important words as inclusiveness, as effectiveness, because we know that between the law and the practice, there is a gap to fill. And it's time to fill this gap. We urge all the countries, all the state parties to accelerate the implementation of rights, and especially in the context of intersectional discriminations. And I have appreciated a lot to listen to you and to see for your toolkit the two key issues, intersectionality and the situation of migrant women and girls is a key issue, and also leadership. And for us, it's a very important thing to have in mind these two issues. The consideration of the gender dimension in migration at all levels is for us a recurrent subject. And we use to raise this problematic at each step of our dialogue with the state parties. It was the case recently with Denmark, and it was the case also with France a few years ago. And it's for us something very important everywhere in the world, but especially in Europe, because there is a sort of legal framework, but we consider that it's not enough. And migrant women are often facing barriers, obstacles, and for us, law exists, but access to law is not effective. So it's a first way that we use to promote this this point. Secondly, we have in the optional protocol, and you describe it very well in the toolkit, the possibility for individual communication to reinforce our action in terms of support to migrant women, because in a lot of cases we have the problematic of refoulement, and also status, integration, access to education, access to professional labor market, or more simply, access to information. And it's true that we describe generally a sort of protocol to ensure the consideration of these different difficulties. And the third point, and it has been raised at the beginning of this webinar, it's our general recommendations. It's a sort of doctrine, and it's very important. The letter about trafficking shows the risk faced by women during on the routes of migration, of course, but not only, sometimes in refugees camps and also in host countries. So I highly appreciate your vision of leadership, because I think that it is the best response, also self-esteem, freedom to resist. And also we need, and it has been also very well highlighted in your toolkit, we need to reinforce our fight against stereotypes, against negative practices, some traditions. And probably the main challenge is to create a culture of equality through education, sensibilization, and the role of NGOs is absolutely crucial, because we consider that it is probably the best support on the ground to this new culture. And I think that I have seen that you use 3R, but I propose 3E, embark, empower, embrace. Because first of all, we need new generations on board. We consider that world facing new crises need a sort of new impetus founded on a new paradigm. Gender equality is not only a fundamental right, it is a leading force for sustainable change. And as expert in charge of SDGs within the Cedaw committee, I consider that we have to cross the SDGs and rights, because gender equality is not only a response to discriminations and violences, it's a response to all the challenges we are facing today: poverty, climate, extremism, or conflicts. So we need really to consider that it is a strategic issue, a global issue, and not only a women issue. And I encourage you to really to have this vision in mind, because sometimes we consider that women issues are social issues. No, it's global issues, strategic issues. And I would like to thank you also for the good practices that you have decided to take into consideration and to highlight in your project, because we need substantive equality. And it's true that the best way to encourage and to implement equality is probably to take the good examples, to work on the ground, to create, as you propose it, groups, task forces, and we encourage that a lot, of course. Your commitment is really a hope for girls, but not only. I think you embody a project for the world. And in Europe, it's especially important, because France is, of course, at the forefront, but Europe too. But we need to keep initiative, because we see that some step backs occur, and we consider that the progress is not guaranteed. So we need to keep on fighting on this subject all together. So I would like to finish my intervention with the 3 keywords: mobilization. I consider that we need really to mobilize NGOs. They are already, but private sector and all the stakeholders, because it's a necessity today to make 2030 the decade for equality. We cannot wait for new years, many years. And secondly, we need to consider that empowerment leadership is part of women's rights in all fields. I am focal point with IPU. IPU is the entity International Parliamentary Union, which works, of course, on parity in politics. And we have decided to elaborate a joint statement on parity by 2030. Can you imagine that in the parliament all over the world, only 25% of women are members of parliament? And I think that we need more and more to consider that innovation is a very, very key word, because we are all today concerned by intelligence and artificial intelligence. It's a new world, but we are working on algorithm because we see in Europe, unfortunately, that only 27% of people in the governance structures are women. So we see that some discrimination can occur in the next year. So we have really to stay focused and very involved on that. And the last word is acceleration for me, because as Delphine O said, we need to go further and faster, and we need you. I think that the Cedaw committee considers that after 40 years, we need to give to the promise of equality an effective content. And I'm ready really to keep links with you on behalf of the Cedaw committee to deepen this absolute necessity. Thank you a lot, and have a very, very nice day. And really, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Nicole-Emeline, for your inspiring words. And we will definitely jump on that opportunity of coming to meet you in Geneva. Thank you. It's an honor to hear that. So thanks a lot. I now have the task to ask the audience if there's any questions that they may have. You can write them in the Q&A section, and I will do my best to address them. The first question is quite technical, but we can dig more into depth afterwards, is where can participants to this webinar find a recording of this webinar later on? So I leave that to Hélène or Violette or the Sciences Po team.
Well, I think it will be available. The Présage program will send the recording of this event. So we will let you know once it is available.
Thank you, Hélène. So for anybody who doesn't follow the Présage on social media, please do so, because you will find a lot of information there. And we will also relay the information on both the European Networks of Migrant Women Facebook page and the Radical Girls. So stay tuned for that. The second question we have, and I think this can be very well answered by Anna, but if any of the panelists want to jump in, please do so. It is from Marie, who is based in Germany, and she says that there's a lot of refugee women that are coming to Germany through child marriage, and that child marriage is validated and accepted by the German government and even by law. So even if they're minors or even girls as young as 14 married to men of 30 years old or even a higher age, the German government is deeming these girls that they are safe to travel and safe to stay, even if they're a solo underage refugee. So what is your opinion on that? And I can rephrase if it was not well understood.
Shall I answer the opinion of the European Network of Migrant Women, and then others can speak as well? Well, for us, it's very, very clear. Child marriage is a crime. It's and when it is child marriage of a girl child, which is the majority, overwhelming majority of child marriages, then it is a crime against a woman or against a girl. So there is no kind of discussion about it on our books, because we are very clear on what constitutes violence against women. We are very clear that no tradition, no religion, no cultural practices can be a justification for what is understood in international law as violence against women. Specifically with regards to state of Germany, I do not have all the details, but I remember that I think in I think it was 2017 or maybe 18, there was a precedent, a very strange precedent set in a sense that there was this marriage where, well, the so-called marriage where a girl was indeed a child, and the husband was maybe, I don't know, in his 30s, and somehow the social authorities or some other authorities accepted this fact that yes, they're married, and she was initially placed, I think, in a care in a care facility, and then he was given access to basically have sex with her or meet with her because he is her husband. Again, we think the decision is wrong. That we think that there is no justification for it, but also we think that the state of Germany, in the process of doing so, I do not know if this decision was then later challenged and appealed in some higher court. If it was not, then in our view, this would be violation of, for example, Cedaw Convention. This would be the violation also of the European law, which is also that recognizes that child marriage. Well, there is no law, there is no European law on child marriage, but in other laws it is incorporated. So I think also we need to raise awareness on this. And what is important here is that sometimes, and I think the young women who were presenting the poetry and the toolkit, they made it very clear that we consider the rights of women, as does Cedaw, they are inalienable, they are indivisible. We cannot say, okay, because you are 14, you have a little bit less rights as a woman, and so therefore you can be a little bit violated here and there, but if you are 25, then it's not the case. And we also work according to the Istanbul Convention, which defines a woman that includes every girl under 18. So therefore, all the rights afforded under the Istanbul Convention to women should be enjoyed, or protections should be enjoyed by the young women or girls. So this will be our very clear position that as a network.
And if I may add something, I think I want to highlight also the idea of universalism, because these rights are universal for all women and girls, no matter their age, but also no matter where they come from. And I think in our Western countries, like Europe, Germany, I live in Belgium now, there is a lot of cultural relativism. I work with women from the Arab world in Belgium, and sometimes girls come to us saying that they want hymenoplasty, reconstruction of the hymen, because they think they will get killed by their family if they know that they have had sex. And the first reaction of many organizations is to direct them with to services that are going to give this service to them. And I think that's cultural relativism, because what this girl is facing is a violence. She's gonna have virginity tests and maybe get forced married, etc. And instead of addressing the issue, trying some mediation with the family, with an intercultural approach, they just say, oh yeah, okay, let's give her a reconstruction of her hymen. So to me, that's cultural relativism, and rights protected under Cedaw and Istanbul Convention should be applicable to all women, no matter where they come from, no matter how old they are. So I think that relates to the question as well.
Thank you to both for this very clear standing and positioning. I think it's important for us in the women's movement. We have additional questions, so that's very good. Elena is asking, as Anna was mentioning before, that even though we have this particular situation of migrant and refugee women in Europe, but it was also mentioned that most of the migrant population stands outside of the European region. So how do you think that this experience is relevant to other countries and backgrounds, and how could this initiative be replicated in other parts of the world, knowing that they may have a kind of different contexts? If anybody wants to answer, go ahead.
I think...
Я хотела бы кое-что добавить.
Go ahead, Fatima.
То,
If you
что
want to understand
проблема
Fatima,
о том, что идет о ранних браках, так как я мигрантка, и я нахожусь среди этих людей, я часто очень сильно наблюдаю за этим каждый день. И очень многие мигранты, которые здесь находятся, знают, что я с ними не общаюсь, я не поддерживаю особую связь, потому что этим девочкам с ними не о чем говорить. Они говорят только про замужество и парней. И я очень часто замечаю то, что это не их слова, им буквально навязывают это им делают обязательным, что у них должен быть парень, они должны с ними общаться, но они не могут не касаться друга, не целоваться, не секса, но у них обязательно кто-то должен быть, как будто они игрушки, то есть они будут неполноценными, если у них никого нет. И даже сейчас меня отдали в замуж 16 лет, и я прожила в ужасном браке, когда мне не давали ни слова, и когда я им говорю, вы не должны делать это, лучше учитесь, они не хотят учиться, они говорят, я хочу замуж, и они очень часто мне говорят, у тебя все было, теперь дай попробовать нам. И я всегда им говорю, разве вы не видите, что у большинства женщин кавказских именно вот из-за глупых традиций, что они все несчастливы. Они не говорят об этом, они предпочитают умолчать, чтобы подрастающее поколение тоже с ними случилось то же самое, что и с ними. То есть эта тема такой табун, ты не можешь говорить, что мужчины плохие, что ты не можешь говорить, что твой брак плохой только потому, что это твоя обязанность, каждая женщина должна выйти замуж. И это происходит по сей день. То есть ранние браки, даже тут в Польше девочки выходят замуж 15-16 лет, 14 лет, у них парни, взрослые мужчины по 20, по 30 лет, взрослые дяди. У меня была знакомая моей сестры, подруга, которая вышла в 15 лет замуж за 33-летнего мужика. И все считают это нормально. Они хвалят его, они говорят, что это хорошо. Это происходит по сей день, прямо у меня на глазах. В Польше, в Европе, и никто с этим не борется и ничего не говорит, потому что когда об этом доходит речь до людям, которые до государства, они все говорят, ну ведь она согласна.
Thank you, Fatima, for sharing your story and your experience and reminding of that cultural relativism that is very much practiced on European soil. To go back to the previous questions, if any of you women have an idea of how our toolkits can be replicated in other parts of the world, and
right now with Radical Girls, we're working on another toolkit because this one is really specific to, we designed it a little bit for our members, you know, organizations working with migrant women in Europe. But the idea behind it is really applicable to other contexts, because the main idea is this creation of women-only safe space, and then the use of alternative methods. For instance, for this project, we used theater and spoken word poetry, but in every context, it wouldn't be that, it would be something else, but the idea, the logic behind it would be the same. Right now, as I was saying, we're working on another toolkit, Radical Girls, more general, that can be applicable in more different contexts, but I think the main thing, this new toolkit will have general guidelines, but because the main thing in different contexts is to get involved, get close to NGOs already working grassroots with women on this context, and to use their expertise and their knowledge of the self-limitation, stereotypes, blocks, barriers, specific barriers that these women face on their local context. So I think that's the main thing. For instance, right now with another organization that I work with, we have a partnership with an organization in Senegal to fight menstrual, how do you say that in English? Menstrual precarity. And so we went to different schools in order to teach girls how to create their own menstrual pads and use them and blah, blah, blah. And this is really taboo in Senegal. And so it really was a success because we reached a lot of girls. And the main idea was to be in relationship, in partnership with this local organization that already was trusted amongst the community, and then to have this women only, in that case girls only space, and to ease into the taboo. So not address it really upfront, but just, you know, create this sense of belonging, sharing experiences, acknowledging that we are all in the same boat as women, etc., etc., and then we're able to address the issue. I think that would be the general idea, but we're working on it.
Can I also add something? I just want to say that I think generally, regardless of the specificities of the toolkit, and okay, they're based on the methodology and experience of the radical girls from the European Network of Migrant Women, and of course the participants, it was shaped because we keep emphasizing this word, that we work organically. We do not force women into anything. We do not impose things on them. Some women might be ready for some activities. Some women might prefer to observe some activities, and some women may come, may try, and they might think, no, it's not for me, or it's not for me right now. But I think the very idea of engaging young women with international law, or with any kind of law for that matter, because as I said, it's about being active and responsible political subject. A citizen, or citizen not in the sense when you have citizenship, but in terms of exercising or knowing your rights. I think that it is, of course, replicable and applicable across different contexts. And let's not forget, Cedaw is the second most ratified convention in the world. There are just 5 or 6 countries who haven't ratified Cedaw. So it makes perfect sense to run workshops like this, to adapt and modify such toolkits, and to simplify. And by simplify, I do not mean that Cedaw is very complicated. If you read the articles of Cedaw, they are quite straightforward. Yes, general recommendations are very long, and it can be kind of quite scary and complicated, but there is a way to explain it in simple. There's always a way to explain to women and to young women the law in a way that is, if the law cannot be understood by ordinary women, that means it's a bad law. And Cedaw is not a bad law. It is a good law that women can understand and they can engage with.
Thank you. We have the time for one last question, and then we must unfortunately end this webinar.
If I may just a word about what said the last speaker. I think that it's true that we need to create a better information, and thank you again for your job, but we need probably to be much more efficient to give the best information about the Cedaw Convention, because a lot of women and girls, of course, doesn't know this wonderful tool. So maybe we have to create a new action with France and European countries and NGOs to give a better visibility to this convention, and we can try to find good ideas about that. And I would like to thank you for highlighting the importance of universality of rights. It's probably the main fight today, to keep the multilateral system and to be able to keep this vision, this global vision of women's rights all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Well, am I mute? No. Sorry, there was a little technical problem here. So to end this event, I give the floor to Hélène Perivier. She is the director of Présage, which is the gender studies program of Sciences Po, with which the students of Sciences Po collaborated with us. but she is also an economist at the OFCE. So Hélène, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adriana. So I have the hard talks to conclude very briefly this very rich event. We are running out of time, so that's why I will be very brief. So it was very inspiring, and I would like to congratulate all panelists for the participation to this event. You have shed light on sisterhood, feminism, and women's rights through the power of poetry. And art is not only political, but it is also a way towards emancipation. So it was very strong. Thank you very much for this. I would like also to thank Fatima Kutsoeva and Anna Lubeiloza for having shared their own experience. It was very strong, I have to admit this. Then also I would like to thank our partner, the team of European Networks of Migrant Women, and to all migrant women who have participated in this project. Thank you very much for having give the opportunity to our students to participate to this very great initiative. It was a great opportunity for them. None of this would have been possible without our partner, Women Forward International. And I would like to thank Kent Davis Parkwood for being our partners on those projects. It's really great for us and for Sciences Po students to have the possibility to be part of those events and those projects. I would like also to warmly thank Delphine O and of course Nicole Amlin for their precise comments and their active participation to this event. It was also very stimulating to have your feedback on this project. Of course, thank you very much to the Sciences Po team, to the students of Sia, Gabrielle, Carolina, Gillian, Fatih, Sharon, and to Amandine Lebellec, who has supervised the research part of the project, because this project was also a research project. It was a research action project. And of course, also thank you very much for the translator during this event, because it makes it possible to have a real inclusive event. So it was very important for us also. And last but not least, I would like to warmly thank my colleague Violette Toyer for the amazing job that she has done during the whole academic year and for this event in particular. So thank you for this project. The Cedaw, as is what said, has to benefit to all migrant women and girls, and in a very concrete way in their daily life. This is what this international agreement was made for, to make women's rights being effective. So thank you very much for what has been done in this project, and I wish you a great evening to all participants. Thank you very much.